what you're trying to do is build something in your life that's giving you more energy than it's taking away. That way, when it gets boring, when it gets hard, when you find your focus slipping, you're gonna have what you need to come back to that thing that you know you should be focusing on.
It's in these nooks of the suffering within your brain, in the scarring, are all the answers to why you are on the couch feeling sorry for yourself. Don't just say, I'm afraid to jump off an airplane. What makes you afraid of it? Study it.
So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna reprogram your brain. Your brain is like software. We're just gonna reprogram it. I said, how do I do that? He goes, just every time you have a chance, say, I'm ruggedly handsome, I'm ruggedly handsome. He said, the words that follow I am follow you. You just didn't know it.
This is how you improve your focus and increase productivity. I'm Tom Bilyeu for Goalcast. I co-founded and built the billion-dollar brand Quest Nutrition starting from scratch with no knowledge of the food industry and only about $10,000 in startup capital. We grew the company by 57,000% in our first 3 years alone, and Inc. magazine named us the second fastest growing private company in America. How did I do it? By learning to be deadly efficient with my time and by staying focused long after the tasks became really boring. The truth is, by nature, I am really easily distracted and I'm absolutely horrific at time management. When I was a kid, I was diagnosed with hyperactivity disorder. My whole life, I've been the kind of person that bounced off the walls. I lack discipline and follow through, quite frankly. But what I learned is that focus is just like a muscle. If you train it, it gets stronger. The question is, how on earth do you train it? That's what I spent the last 20 years of my life as an entrepreneur perfecting. It's taken me several failed businesses and a couple of grand scale successes to prove out these methods, so grab something to take notes with. All right, here are the 8 training secrets that took me from scrounging in my couch cushions to find enough change to put gas in my car to generating real phenomenal wealth. Number 1, start with passion. Willpower isn't a finite resource, but motivation is. So when you feel like you don't have the willpower that you need, chances are what you're really lacking is motivation. So you're not pursuing something that means enough to you for you to be able to generate energy. You want to pursue things that give you more energy than they take. Now, I don't think anybody's born with a passion. I think that it's something that you build in your life. I don't think it's something that you find. You find something that you're interested in, but then you're going to fan the flames of that interest through engagement, turn it into a fascination, and then through the process of gaining mastery, you turn that fascination into a real full-blown passion. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is build something in your life that's giving you more energy than it's taking away. That way, when it gets boring, when it gets hard, when you find your focus slipping, you're gonna have what you need to come back to that thing that you know you should be focusing on. Then you're going to push through. So knowing that it's not really about having the willpower to bring yourself back around to what you should be focused on, but rather making sure that the thing you're supposed to be focused around is exciting to you, then you're gonna be able to make it. Number 2, practice grit. And the way you're going to practice this is by learning to meditate. Now, meditation may not seem like the most logical way to practice grit, but in reality, meditating is really just about coming back to the breath. Every time your thoughts wander, you're going to bring it back to the breath, bring it back to the breath. And that practice of over and over recentering yourself, coming back, stopping thinking about this new distraction and just come back to the task at hand, which is your breath. And in doing that, and that's how you're gonna build that muscle. So not only are there other massive benefits to meditation, including clearing your mind, but it's also going to allow you to practice coming back to something over and over and over. Because ultimately, that's what focus is. What am I supposed to be thinking about? What am I supposed to be doing? And every time your mind wanders, because it is going to wander, but every time it wanders, you want to get good at bringing it back. All right, the second part of meditating, clearing your head, brings us to the next thing, which is number 3, cognitive optimization. And that's one of the other benefits of meditation is it's going to not only give you the chance to practice coming back to something over and over and over, but it's going to lower what I call your background radiation, your stress, your anxiety. It's going to go away as you meditate. And that's absolutely critical because if you're going to be efficient, you've got to be cognitively optimized. There are really 3 ways to do that. Number 1, get as much sleep as you need. However much that is, get it. I don't use an alarm. I built a billion-dollar brand not using an alarm. So there are no excuses about how busy you are. I work a lot, but I'm telling you right now, I get sleep first. Number 2, hit the gym. I wish this weren't so because I am not a fan of the gym, but going to the gym forces you to stick to a routine, to do hard things, and most importantly, studies show that it's the only way to fully cognitively optimize. You've got to get in and push your body. It's going to help regulate the way that you think. All right, the third thing on that is you've got to make sure that your diet is on point. Again, I wish that I could just eat a tub of licorice every day. I love junk food in ways you can't imagine, but it doesn't help you think clearly. And if you're going to get done the things that you want to get done, if you're going to achieve your goals, if you really want to be able to focus, you've got to have your diet on point. You avoid cognitive fatigue, you avoid things like brain fog. It allows you to really be at your best and think clearly. Number 4, apply the newfound grit that you've been building through meditation and going to the gym to your work. Just like you force yourself to go to the gym when you don't want to, and you're forcing yourself to sit there and meditate and come back to the breath, even though I'm sure you want to do something else, that act of going and doing the thing that's leading you towards your goals rather than whatever random thing your mind throws up in front of you, that gives you the discipline to see something through, to have the ability to come back over and over. When you start applying that to your tasks, all of a sudden you're going to see that you start working through your to-do list and you start actually making real progress. All right, number 5, you're gonna have to change your identity. None of this stuff is gonna come easily. Sitting down, doing the work, what Michio Kaku calls butt power, actually sitting there and just getting through that task list isn't going to be easy, and a lot of times it's gonna be really boring. It is not gonna be fun. You're gonna wanna go do your version of play, whatever that is. But in those moments, your identity is gonna save you because you're gonna take the time to repeat to yourself what kind of person you are. And this narrative, this thing that you tell yourself about yourself, is going to determine what you achieve in life. I always say there are 2 things that really matter. Number 1, what you repeat to yourself about yourself, and number 2, what you repeat to other people. What do you say out loud? Because when you tell people what kind of person you are, what you're about, what you do, what you're trying to build, you create this need for congruence. As you're telling people that you're that way, as you're telling people how you think, that you're pushing yourself, that you're the kind of person that, fill in the blank, focuses, has a big mission, is working towards it, only does what leads you toward your goals, whatever it is that you're repeating to yourself and to others, you're going to create that need to be congruent with that. And that is hugely advantageous. Make sure that you're taking advantage of that. All right, number 6, you've got to hold yourself to a ridiculously high standard. The truth is, in life, there's only one path to success, and that is set the bar ridiculously high and then surpass all expectations. You don't want to play the part of achieving your goals. You don't want to pay lip service to it. You actually want to do it. And to do that, you've got to hold yourself accountable to progress. When you're holding yourself accountable to a high standard, when your identity is tied in, then all of a sudden you're actually going to be looking for those metrics of real progress that you can identify, and you won't be afraid to adjust course if you're not actually making that progress. Because who you are and the way that you feel about yourself is tied up in all of that. Number 7, be deadly efficient with your time. The goal here is to be proactive, not reactive. Most people spend all of their time being reactive. They spend a lot of time checking their email, taking phone calls, taking meetings, rather than saying, this is my goal, this is my plan to reach that goal. Whenever I check my email, I feel a deep and pervading sense of shame, because when you're checking your email, you're being very reactive and you're saying somebody else outside of my business knows better how I should be spending my time than I do. So I highly encourage you guys to keep your email checking to an absolute minimum. I probably reply to less than 5 emails a week. And I do that because I have that list of important things. I know at all times what I should be working on. I don't need other people to tell me. So my advice to you is keep a list of the most important things you could be doing at any one time to reach your goals. I live and die by my important things list. Number 8, and this is one of the most important things that any of us can remember. 80% of business is knowing what not to do. Most people are drowning in opportunity. People think that the hard part is going to be to get some opportunity, for something to come along that they're able to take advantage of and really create some momentum off of. The reality is we're all standing in a room with 1,000 doors, and our job is to close 999 of them. The problem in your life isn't going to be a lack of opportunity. I actually think opportunities come along all the time. The problem is knowing which ones to pursue and which ones to say no to. And that's what feeds back into that important things list, which feeds back into your goals. You have to have crystal clarity on what your goal is and how you're going to achieve it. And that's how you're going to decide which one of those 1,000 doors you're actually going to step through.
The mind is the one thing that we don't test enough. A lot of us are so afraid of that test, and that's the real test. That's where the real growth comes from, is the mind. I have all these scars on my brain from growing up, from being abused, from suffering through life, from having a learning disability, from stuttering, from having just a really bad childhood. And so all those memories, I had to cut open that scar and go into it. And that was a hard process for me to do. Not only was that a hard process for me to do, for me to have the courage to share that with people, because I'm the so-called toughest man on the planet. So they think.
Tell us about some of the defining moments in your childhood that actually framed that experience to being a nightmare.
Well, my dad was a person that, he was an alcoholic. And he was really big on being a powerful man. And he had two different sides to him. No one knew anything about the inside of that house. The inside of that house was horrible. It was evil, like the evil monster came out to play. But once he left that house, he was the nicest person on the planet. So no one knew, who this guy was. So the scarring started happening inside the dungeon. And my dad didn't really believe in us going to school. He had a family business, and the family business was a skating rink and also a bar. So my dad owned, it was called the Vermilion Room was the bar, and the skating rink was called Skateland. So from the time I was able to walk, I was working that skating rink. And I worked it from like 9 o'clock at night until like 12 o'clock in the morning pretty much. That's what we did. I'm 4 years old, scraping gum off the skating rink floor, doing stuff like that. Me and my brother and my mom. Once the skating rink was shut down, the bar would open up. The bar would be open from like midnight to like 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. Once that closed down, we'd go upstairs and clean the bar. So by the time you work like this, I'm a young kid. It's time to go to school. So most time we didn't go to school. So we missed school a lot, but thank God for me, I didn't like school anyway. With a learning disability, with a stutter, I had white splotches all over my skin from being stressed out, hair, patches of hair falling out at a young age. And once my dad got drunk, that's when the nightmare began. And he'd get drunk, he'd get violent, and we got beatings quite regularly, probably at least once or twice a week. And the beatings weren't like, hey, I'm gonna give you a whipping because you did something wrong. It was like, hey, I don't feel good today. And you get beat for that. And my mom got a lot of the beatings, and it would just trickle down to me and my brother. So that foundation of life that I didn't have, that's how it started off for me. And it's progressively got worse. So when you have a horrible foundation, it's like building a house on a fucked up foundation. This is what you're gonna get. Any kind of earthquake or something happen, the house is gonna go down. Sometimes, it don't even take an earthquake. It takes a little windstorm. So that was me. I was just a little windstorm away from breaking. So what happened in my life was we started to get, I call it like the rucksack. A rucksack is a pack that you carry in the military, and you put all your stuff in it. Your radios, your food, your water, all that stuff you have to carry in the military. That's your rucksack. It's a backpack pretty much. As you're growing up, we all have a backpack. Most of ours, hopefully, is empty, and what we put in it is all the crap we go through in life. That's what is in the backpack for the civilians, and we carry it around with us. We have to break the barriers within our minds, within the world, and it starts with yourself. The brain is the most powerful thing. The mind is the most powerful thing that we have. It's not your phone, it's not the computer, it's not anything, it's your mind. And if you can tap into that, you can come from the daggone roots of hell and become such a great seed, a powerful seed that can grow into some great daggone garden. You have to look at suffering as almost like I look at failure. To succeed, you must fail. In failure and in suffering, all the answers are in there. Go in there, go into the suffering. Go into the pain of your life and say, why did this suck for me so bad? Why am I afraid of all this stuff? Why have I shut down the whole world? I guarantee I'll tell you why you shut down the whole world. It's in these nooks of the suffering within your brain, in the scarring, are all the answers to why you are on the couch feeling sorry for yourself. Don't just say, I'm afraid to jump off an airplane. What makes you afraid of it? Study it. That's why I studied my mind. Why I became so powerful in the mind is because I realized I was weak. So instead of running away from the mind, I dove into it and said, what is making me weak? Oh, this makes sense. I came from hell. I came from a place that beat me down to nothing. So systematically, one by one, I went back and met every single person in my mind, every situation. I went one-on-one with them again in my mind and said, okay, let's now revisit this. And that's how you do it. The brain protects you, but protects you so much, it doesn't allow growth. You find yourself when you're not comfortable. When you're not comfortable on a daily basis. And that's how I started to grow. Like I said about the mind, it wants to put you in that nice 72-degree temperature with everything right there. It wants to be in that nice with a little massage therapist. That's where your mind wants to be. Doesn't want to be, and we're going to talk about Hell Week. So it doesn't want to be in Hell Week. In Hell Week, I was in 3 of them. I finished 2 of them in 1 year. Only person to ever do that in still history. There's been people who have gone through a couple of Hell Weeks, but in like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. I was in 3 in 1 year. They say it takes off 3 to 5 years of your life. So Hell Week is 130 hours of continuous training. You might get 2 hours of sleep. And what it does is, it's designed to break a man. If you only fix the surface, you will never get through Hell Week. Because what it does, it starts to bring out these demons. Because even though there's a lot of yelling and stuff like that, there's times where it's very peaceful in a very eerie way. So the first hour of the 130 is breakout. They're shooting guns, it's loud, it's noisy, your mind is in chaos. When your mind's in chaos, you can't think. So you're having fun. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, we're in Hell Week. We're Navy SEALs, or trying to be Navy SEALs. We're badasses. Then what they do, and I don't even think that they understand what they're doing, but I studied the mind. It's perfect. It's psychological warfare. They go from an hour, the first hour when you're going crazy. The second hour of the 130, they put you in the cold water. It's called surf torture. Now they don't call it surf torture because it's a kinder, gentler word. It's called surf acclimation or something like that. Whatever. Everybody's getting soft. So they call it surf torture for a good reason. They put you out there. No one's quit yet. It's only been an hour. Maybe a couple of guys have. And you're in the Pacific Ocean, which is never warm. You're all linked arms. You're sitting there and the waves are crashing over you. I went through winter Hell Weeks, which is cold. The Pacific Ocean is like 50 degrees. It was 49 this particular night in my 3rd Hell Week. And what it does is it makes your mind flip out. We've been doing this now for 3 weeks, being in this water. But for some reason now, the water is colder than it's ever been. It's not. Our minds are fragile. We can process a day. It's hard to process 130 hours. There's no end. There's no end. So the mind starts to ramp up. So you're sitting there, it's quiet, no one's yelling at you, you hear the ocean, and you're freezing. And your mind goes spastic, starts to think, I have another 129 hours. You're not going home, you're getting yelled at, you could be frozen. So you panic, you freak out, and you want to quit. What I realized about the mind is those people who can be in that time and embrace that time and be in that moment and not allow the mind to go to 129 hours on hour 1. It's the control that we don't have in our minds. It's the control that you had to have for 3 months when you're miserable, when you're suffering, when you're laying on the floor, when you're doing all the disciplines it takes to be a monk. You cannot think about the whole process. It will make you It will make you so insanely crazy. It's impossible. It's inhumane what I'm about to do to myself. You have to be able to break all these big, humongous, painful things in life down to the smallest molecule, because that's all the brain can handle. The brain can't handle hours and hours and hours of suffering, but it can handle right now. I'm in the Pacific Ocean and it's very cold. And this is what I'm doing. Every day I tell myself, I used to believe I was the weakest man that God ever created. So now I believe that I'm the hardest human being that God ever made. I don't care if it's true or not. It's the most important conversation to me. It's the thing that drives me every day. It's the one thing that keeps me going every day, is that you must constantly be that man that you want to be.
I had to feed 22 horses every morning before I earned the right to have breakfast. Imagine an 8.5-year-old kid getting up in the dark in Canada and going outside and opening the barn door. And I remember there would be like 30 rats every time I opened the barn door. And they would scurry around, and I would hope that none of them would stay around. And one time I went back to the house and I said, "Dad, can you come with me?" And he locked the door and he says, "Go out and do your chores and don't come back until they're done." And it was kind of the beginning of me realizing that I wasn't in a supportive environment. And I learned one thing, and one thing only, is that if I was willing to work hard, then I could get my dad's attention. I remember waking up, I was about 13 or 14 years old, and this was the day my dad had promised me it was gonna be yes. This was the day we were gonna play together. We were gonna throw the football back and forth, and I was super excited. I popped out of my bed and I ran down the stairs, and I saw my father where he always is. His ankle is chained to the desk. But as I got closer, I knew something was wrong. It was like I could feel there was a heaviness in the air. And I started to get nervous. And I went, "Dad?" And he went, "Yes." I went, you ready to go play?" And the weirdest thing happened is he turned, he looked at me, and I felt myself shrinking down. And he stood up, and this shadow cast over me. And he goes, "Do you have any idea what it takes to put food on the table? Do you think that this roof just puts itself there? Money doesn't grow on trees, you know. One day you're gonna have to work hard for money. Now get out and play on your own before I put you to work." And I turned around and I walked out, and I never asked him again to play, ever. I don't have one memory of playing with my dad. Not one. The only way I connected with him was when he was working around the house doing a chore. I'd say, "Dad, can I help you?" I'd hand him the nails, or I'd hold the measuring tape. It was the only way. Never once. He never came to my hockey games. He dropped me off in the car and stayed in the car. While all the other parents were tying their skates, I was there alone. I would try to score as many goals as I could so I could go in and tell him that I scored the winning goals. So he'd want to come and look, but he never did. I remember winning honors in school for academic achievement, looking out in the crowd, hoping to see my dad, but he was never there. So the only solace I had was to work hard. So I doubled down on that, and I worked hard, and I'd call him out to look at the task being done, and invariably it was never good enough. So I doubled down again and worked harder. It didn't feel good at the time, but in life, what you do, if you do what is easy, life will be difficult. But if you do what is difficult, life will be easy. I got the difficult part up front, and I got really good at it. By the time I was 14, I saved up enough money to get a scooter. By the time I was 16, I had my first car. By the time I was 17, I thought, you know what? I'm out of here. This sucks. I mean, I could go out and make 4 times the amount of money living on my own, even if I have to pay rent. I don't care. So I moved out. I drove a taxi. I did carpentry. I cut lawns. I washed windows. I did anything that was hard work because that's all I knew. And then my life changed. I got a call from my stepmom, and she said, "Your dad has cancer." So I jumped on a plane and I did everything I could. I took care of the house. He said to me he had some back taxes from Canada that were unpaid. I said, "Yes, I'll pay them for you." I did everything I possibly could. And I remember the day I had to leave to go back to take care of my family. I had a young son at the time, and I had nothing left. And I asked my dad, well, he was probably 98 pounds lying in the bed. And I said, "Dad, can you think of a time when I made you proud?" And I'm thinking to myself, my God, there's a whole bunch. I was almost a millionaire by that time. I had done so many things. I'd risen up, I'd opened a restaurant, I'd learned a new language, I'd done so many things. This was the time he was going to go, "Of course, son, let me read from a list." But instead, he said nothing that I can think of. And I don't know if it broke my spirit or if I thought I had hit rock bottom, I hit another layer. But when I got back home, actually, I was fired from my job. My marriage had fallen apart. I had no money left that I'd paid to support him, so I got evicted from my apartment and I moved back with my mom at the age of 30. So there I am, 30 years old, working 16 hours a day for 20 years, and I have absolutely nothing to show for it, except maybe a skill set on how to work hard. But I tell you what, when you're down there and you think there's nothing left, it's the foundation to grow from. I thought, what am I gonna do now? And some little bird mentioned real estate, so I thought I'd get into real estate. I got into real estate, and that's when I met my first mentor that transformed my life. I was in my office one night really late, and I was having a conversation with my mentor, and he walks in and he leans against the door and he goes, "You're still here?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "You really have a great work ethic." And I went, "You talking to me?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm talking to you." He goes, "You're awesome." I'm like, "Are you still talking to me?" It's like I never had anybody tell me that they believed in me. My father certainly was always, "You could do better, you could do better, you could do better." Yeah, it drove me, but it didn't make me feel confident. And I doubted it at first. And we started to talk. And he goes, "Oh, so you've labeled yourself stupid as a loser and a skinny little kid." He goes, "How do you feel about that?" And I said, "I still feel that way." He says, "You're 30 years old." I go, "Yeah, I know, but I still felt that way inside." He says, "Okay, we're gonna change that. Who's an idol that you have?" I said, "Well, one of my favorite is like Clint Eastwood. He's like rugged. I'm kind of rugged. I feel rugged." He goes, "Perfect. How does that feel when you say that?" I said, "That feels pretty good." He goes, "That's it. I want you to say that 1,000 times. 1,000 times every day, or more if you want. Loser out, ruggedly handsome in." So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna reprogram your brain. Your brain is like software. We're just gonna reprogram it. I said, "How do I do that?" He goes, "Just every time you have a chance, say, I'm ruggedly handsome, I'm ruggedly handsome." He said, "The words that follow I am follow you. You just didn't know it. You had shitty programming. But now we're gonna change that and change that forever." And I remember driving home, I was so excited. I was so excited because I could change my program. I didn't know it. I thought I was stuck that way my whole life. And all I had to do was have the energy to put it into changing the way I see myself. And I just said it over. I remember screaming in the car, "I'm ruggedly handsome, ruggedly handsome, ruggedly handsome." I'd get up in the morning, I'd say it over and over and over again. I'd say it as much as I possibly could. And then spontaneously one morning, I was in the shower and I said, "I'm the greatest real estate agent in my area. I'm the greatest real estate agent in my area." And I went from one sale in my first year to, in a few years, 100 sales. I broke every record there was. And then I bought the freaking company. Went from farm boy to financially free. I became resourceful. I became capable of doing things I didn't know I was gonna do. The most powerful force in the human psyche is how we describe ourselves to ourselves. Who's giving you labels? You're too short, you're too tall, you're quiet, you're introverted. And you take on those labels and you wear them like they're your persona. And then you live into them, like a role that you were given in life. You can rewrite that. You can make it whatever you want. Insert it and then program it. I am. I am. You are what? Gifted, guided, grateful, powerful, passionate, playful, sexy, sensual, sensitive, and blessed. What are you? Today is the first day of the rest of your life, and you get to redefine yourself. So who are you? And who do you want to be? The words that follow I am follow you.
You got to live where you're almost certain you're going to fail. That's the reason for practice. Practice is controlled failure. You're getting to your limit.